Have you ever watched an English movie and felt like everyone was speaking in fast forward? One moment you catch a word, the next, it's gone. You wonder, do native speakers even breathe when they talk? If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Thousands of learners around the world struggle to keep up with real-life English. But what if I told you the problem isn't your ears, it's the way English is spoken? In today's episode, we're unlocking the secrets behind fast English and showing you how to finally keep up with confidence and ease. If you've ever felt lost listening to a native English speaker, there's a good reason why. The English you hear in real life is not the same as the English in your textbook. It's faster, more emotional, and full of shortcuts. And it's not because native speakers are trying to confuse you, it's just how natural spoken English works. Imagine you've spent years learning words like do not, going to, and what are you, only to find out that most people say don't, gonna, and watcha. No wonder it feels like a completely different language. This isn't just a small detail, it's the key reason why learners often feel left behind. You may know the vocabulary, you may even understand the grammar, but the way native speakers say those words can feel like a blur. They link words together, skip sounds, and use rhythm that can throw off even the most dedicated learners. One sentence might sound like a single long word. Instead of, "Did you eat already?" you hear, "Did you eat already?" and your brain freezes. That's when frustration kicks in. You think, why am I not improving? I study every day. But here's the truth. Studying vocabulary and grammar isn't enough if you're not training your ears to hear how English actually sounds in the real world. Stankling, ripped bows, and forgetting people and Smith, officer and imroding, Andel Sendler, and the pangscaling English changes in vocabulary. Almost important subtion, saying ad exceed, and improvements even entreated from us. Let's break it down. Spoken English has a rhythm. It's not word by word. It's a flowing stream of connected sounds. Native speakers naturally stress some words while swallowing others. They don't say, "I am going to the store." They say, "I'm gonna the store." They don't pause between each word. They blend them together to keep the conversation smooth and fast. And this blending is exactly what confuses most learners. When you hear words smashed together in unfamiliar ways, your brain doesn't have time to process them. It's like trying to catch individual raindrops in a storm. You end up catching nothing. But don't worry, this isn't a permanent problem. It's a training problem. What you need is exposure. You need to hear these patterns again and again until they become familiar. You also need awareness, knowing that did you often becomes didja and let me becomes lemmy. The final piece is practice, repeating what you hear, slowly training your ears and tongue to adjust to real English. So, before we dive into specific techniques, remember this. The reason fast English sounds confusing isn't because you're bad at English, it's because real-life English is different from classroom English. But with the right tools, you can bridge that gap. Let's get started. Now that you understand why fast English feels so overwhelming, let's take a closer look at one of its biggest challenges, connected speech. This is the hidden system behind the blur. When native speakers talk, they don't pronounce every word clearly or separately like a teacher in a classroom. Instead, they blend sounds together to speak more smoothly and naturally. This blending is called connected speech, and it's everywhere in real-life English. Let's take a simple example. In a textbook, you might see the sentence, "Do you want to eat?" Easy, right? But in natural conversation, that becomes, "Do you want to eat?" Or even just, "Do you want to eat?" Sounds completely different, doesn't it? The words aren't gone. They're just hiding. And if you're not used to hearing them like that, your brain might not even recognize them. Connected speech happens in many ways. Sometimes sounds are dropped, like the T in want, to disappearing in wanna. Other times, new sounds appear when words join together, like a soft cheech sound between did you turning into didja, and often words are shortened. Going to becomes gonna, got to becomes gotta, and let me turns into lemmy. These changes are completely normal in native speech, but they're rarely taught clearly in traditional classes. Another key element is sentence rhythm, the musical pattern of English. Native speakers don't just say words, they perform them. Some words are stressed, others are weak. For example, in the sentence, "I didn't say he stole the money," the meaning changes completely depending on which word is stressed. Try saying it with stress on I, then on didn't, then on he. You'll get a different message each time. This rhythm helps native speakers convey feeling, urgency, sarcasm, or even doubt, all without changing the actual words. When learners focus only on individual words, they miss this rhythm entirely. That's why fast English sounds flat out confusing. But if you start listening for stress patterns and the rise and fall of the voice, you'll begin to notice structure where before there was only noise. You'll hear the beats in each sentence and recognize familiar chunks faster. To train your ear, try repeating sentences exactly as you hear them. Don't just focus on the words, focus on how they're said. Listen to native conversations, mark the stressed words, mimic the intonation. You'll start to feel the natural music of English. Connected speech and rhythm aren't tricks, they're the backbone of fluent conversation. And once you learn to hear and use them, the blur begins to fade. You stop listening word by word and start understanding by pattern. That's the moment English begins to sound natural. And finally, you'll feel like you're in the conversation, not just chasing after it. Now that you know how connected speech and sentence rhythm shape the way English sounds, the next question is, how do you train your brain and ears to actually catch those patterns in real time? The answer lies in consistent, focused practice. Not just listening more, but listening better. Let's explore some of the most effective techniques that will help you break the speed barrier and finally keep up with native-level conversation. The first and most powerful method is shadowing. This practice is like language weightlifting for your brain and mouth. Here's how it works. You listen to a short sentence spoken by a native speaker, then immediately repeat it out loud, at the same speed, same rhythm, same tone. You're not just copying words, you're copying how they're said. For example, when you hear, "What do you want to do?" you don't slow it down or clean it up. You say it just like you heard it. This builds both listening and speaking skills at the same time. At first, it may feel impossible, but don't worry. Your brain is adapting even when you struggle. Another excellent technique is called repeat after pause. It's a slower version of shadowing, great for beginners or intermediate learners. You play a short clip, just one sentence. After the sentence, pause the video or audio and repeat exactly what you heard. Then play the next line. This gives you a moment to process the sound before trying to echo it. It's especially helpful for training pronunciation, stress, and connected speech because it forces you to listen with purpose, not just passively. Next, we have dictation practice, one of the most underrated listening tools. It's simple but extremely effective. You listen to a short audio clip, just one or two sentences, and try to write down exactly what you hear. Don't worry if you miss a few words, that's part of the learning process. Then replay the clip and fill in the missing parts. After 2 or 3 listens, compare what you wrote with the actual transcript or subtitles. This not only sharpens your ear for small sounds like articles and prepositions, but also boosts your memory and spelling. What's special about all these methods is that they activate your brain in multiple ways. You're not just hearing, you're repeating, writing, speaking, and analyzing. You're teaching your brain that fast natural English isn't something to fear, it's a pattern to recognize. Over time, the same sentences that once felt impossible will become familiar and even easy. And remember, you don't need to spend hours every day. Just 5 to 10 minutes of focused practice can bring big improvements if you do it consistently. These exercises are like daily workouts for your ears, and the stronger your ears become, the faster your brain will respond, and the more confident you'll feel in real conversations. Once you've built a daily habit with techniques like shadowing, repeat after pause, and dictation, it's time to take your listening skills out of the training room and into the real world. Because ultimately, the goal isn't just to repeat textbook sentences, it's to understand real people in real conversations. That's where real-world English comes in, the unscripted, sometimes messy but beautifully natural way people actually speak. This kind of English is everywhere, in cafes, on YouTube, in podcasts, or even in movies and TV shows. But it sounds different. People use slang, idioms, and casual expressions that often never appear in textbooks. For example, instead of saying, "I'm going to leave," a native speaker might say, "I'm gonna head out." Instead of, "Would you like to eat something?" they may casually say, "Wanna grab a bite?" If you're not exposed to this kind of language, it can feel like a totally different dialect. That's why immersing yourself in real conversations is one of the best things you can do. Start with something short, a 1-minute video, a casual vlog, or a clip from your favorite series. Listen first with subtitles, then try without them. Pause after each sentence and ask, what was actually said? What was the meaning? Try to repeat the sentence naturally, not how it's written, but how it's spoken. This not only trains your ears, it trains your instinct. And to help your brain keep up, you need to learn to process English in chunks, not word by word. This is called chunking, grouping commonly used phrases into single sound units. For example, when you hear "how are you," it shouldn't be 3 separate words. It should sound like one rhythm, "how are ya?" Similarly, "do you want to go" becomes "do ya wanna go?" Once your brain starts recognizing these phrases as single blocks, your comprehension speed increases dramatically. To make chunking even more powerful, combine it with visualization, the practice of imagining the meaning as a mental picture. For example, when you hear, "She ran out of the house, jumped into the car, and drove off," don't try to analyze every verb. Just imagine the scene like a movie in your mind. This trains your brain to understand ideas, not just words. That's exactly how native speakers listen. They don't process every syllable, they process the whole message. The more you combine chunking with visualization, the less you'll need to translate in your head. You'll stop thinking in your native language and start experiencing English directly. That's a massive shift, and it can happen faster than you think when you practice this way daily. So now, with your foundation in technique and your exposure to real speech, you're no longer just learning English, you're living it. And with every casual phrase you catch, with every scene you picture in your mind, you're one step closer to truly understanding fast, natural English. After immersing yourself in real-world English, practicing chunking, and visualizing conversations like movies in your mind, you might begin to notice small victories, catching phrases you used to miss, understanding jokes without subtitles, or feeling less nervous in conversations. But here's the truth. Progress isn't always linear. Some days you'll feel sharp and confident. Other days, you'll feel like you've forgotten everything. That's why your mindset is just as important as your methods. Learning to understand fast English isn't a sprint. It's a long-distance journey. You're not just memorizing vocabulary or copying pronunciation. You're literally retraining your brain to hear and process sound patterns from a completely different language system. And that takes time, patience, and most importantly, grace for yourself. It's easy to get frustrated when you don't catch every word, especially after you've been practicing for weeks or months. You might think, why is this still hard? But remember this, even native speakers miss words sometimes, especially when someone speaks unclearly, uses a strong accent, or talks too fast. The difference is that native speakers don't panic. They rely on context and confidence to fill in the blanks. You can do the same. What you need is a shift in focus, from perfection to progress. Don't measure your success by how many words you miss, measure it by how many more words you catch than you did yesterday. Maybe last week you needed subtitles for every sentence, but today you only need them for half. That's progress. Maybe you couldn't recognize "did you eat yet" when it became "Did you eat yet?" But now you hear it and smile. That's growth. Celebrate these small wins. They are not small at all. They are signs that your brain is adapting, evolving, getting faster. Listening is a mental muscle, and like any muscle, it strengthens with repetition and recovery. That means showing up each day with curiosity, not pressure. 5 focused minutes a day is better than 1 overwhelming hour once a week. The key is consistency over intensity. Another part of mindset is learning to enjoy the process. Find content that makes you smile, laugh, or think. Watch a show you love, listen to a podcast about your hobbies, or follow a YouTuber whose accent you enjoy. When learning feels enjoyable, your brain retains more, and you're more likely to keep going even on tough days. So as you move forward, remind yourself, you're not failing, you're building, you're not stuck, you're stretching. Every word you understand, every sentence you shadow, and every scene you imagine brings you closer to fluency. The more patient and kind you are to yourself, the faster you'll get there, because confidence grows not from being perfect, but from never giving up. Now that you've built the right mindset, focused on progress, not perfection, it's time to diversify your practice methods to take your listening to the next level. You already know shadowing, dictation, and chunking, but there are a few more powerful techniques that, when used together, create a deeper and more natural listening experience. One of the best methods is called the echo method. The echo method is exactly what it sounds like. You play a sentence, then immediately repeat it like an echo, with the same speed, same tone, and same rhythm. Imagine someone says, "I can't believe he said that." Your job is to repeat it instantly. "I can't believe he said that," without pausing to analyze. At first, it feels fast, maybe even messy, but with each repetition, your brain starts to hear ahead, predicting the sounds instead of chasing them. This method not only improves your listening, it syncs your speech muscles with real English speed and tone, helping you sound more natural when you speak. Another critical skill to develop is active listening. Most learners passively hear English in the background, during chores, commuting, or relaxing. That's helpful, but active listening takes it further. You focus your full attention on the speaker, not just on what they say, but how they say it. You listen for emotion, tone, speed, emphasis. For example, in the sentence, "I really don't want to go," the stress on really tells you the speaker's feelings. These emotional cues are vital for understanding fast conversations, especially when you miss a word but still catch the meaning. To sharpen this skill, practice with short dialogues or scenes from movies. Watch the same clip twice, first to get the general idea, second to focus on tone and expression. Ask yourself, who is speaking? What do they feel? Are they angry, excited, sarcastic? These details train your ears to read between the words, which is exactly what fluent listeners do. Lastly, choose content that matches your interests and background knowledge. If you love sports, listen to sports commentary. If you like cooking, watch recipe videos in English. When you already understand the topic, your brain doesn't need to work as hard to figure out the context, and that means you can focus more on the sounds and expressions. This builds confidence quickly because you start to realize, "I know this, I can follow this, I understand more than I thought." Combining all these techniques, echo method, active listening, and topic-based content, creates a powerful feedback loop. Your ears grow sharper, your responses become faster, and your confidence gets stronger every day. And just like that, English starts to feel less like a subject to study and more like a language you live with.